Hello keyboard enthusiasts. Today I've got a video for you about a Reproduction Model F keyboard, aka brand new Model F keyboard by Model F Labs. The name doesn't exactly roll off the tongue, but so be it. If you're watching this, either it's by mistake or you really like keyboards. Assuming the latter, I'm not going to discuss what a buckling spring is or anything like that, and this won't be a full overview. I just wanted to discuss some things that I haven't seen in other videos, as well as give my views on this product. Now, I don't make YouTube videos. I do like keyboards though, and I've bought two of these Model F Reproduction keyboards, the second after the significant price drop, which I'll get to later. However, the second keyboard is going to a friend, as I have no use for two of them. I had seen several videos reviewing this keyboard before and after buying the first one, and I didn't feel like making another video was terribly necessary. The reason I am making this video is that a few weeks ago I emailed Joe, who is the man behind this whole project. I was writing to him about how impressed I was with the quality of the second keyboard, as well as the first. Plus the fact that the firmware that the new keyboard comes with is VIAL ready, and more on that later. And Joe said, "Thanks for the kind words. I'd appreciate if you could make a short video review." And I said, "I don't make YouTube videos." And he said, "Okay, no worries." And that was that. But then I thought more about it, and I thought about a few of the YouTube reviews I had seen about this keyboard where people were quite negative for what I think are the wrong reasons, and I thought that was just unfair. I thought the right thing to do would be to counteract that unwarranted negativity with some warranted positivity. And well, here I am making a YouTube video. Additionally, there are two topics, the sound and the key mapping software, which I feel haven't gotten enough detailed attention in other videos, so I'd like to change that. But yeah, for full disclosure, I paid for these with my own money. No one reviewed this video prior to its uploading, and I am the only person who had a hand in making this video. Thank you, Lon Seidman, for the full disclosure inspiration. Also worth noting is that I've owned several types of mechanical or custom keyboards, including an IBM Model M keyboard. I got like a new old stock model. It was a terminal model, so I had to get an RJ45 source converter, if that means anything to you. I sold that. I have a split ortholinear keyboard. I have a Topra clone by Niz or NIZ, which I've modded a couple different times with custom domes. And some of the keyboards I still have, and some I've sold or gifted to friends. So yeah, as you can see here, this is the NIZ keyboard. I got some MT3 keycaps for it, and it's modded with custom domes, and it's a lot of fun. It's Bluetooth, so you can use it from far away or on the laptop. Here is the second Model F that's going to go to a friend, and here you can see in the back the split keyboard, which I generally just use the left half if I'm going to play an FPS, which I don't have as much time to play anymore. But yeah, so my point is, while I'm no Kairos Ron 22, nor do I have as great of a voice, I'm also not new to custom keyboards, and if I'm being perfectly honest, I wish I liked keyboards less. My wife certainly wishes that, but such is life. So the first topic I'd like to go into detail about is the sound. There's a bit of confusion about the sounds that this keyboard makes. People use words like click, ping, hum, or whatever, and they don't really explain what they mean. So I'd like to explain. As I see it, there are three types of sound that this keyboard can make. One, it's the sound of the flipper striking the bottom plate. This is guaranteed. It's quite similar to a Model M in this regard. If you like clicky keyboards, you'll like this sound. The other two sounds are caused by the spring, and a lot of people, they lump these two sounds together, but they're very different. One sound the spring makes, it's a resonant sound of the spring vibrating after being released. It's a gentle metallic hum, I guess. I don't know. It's tough to describe, but I'll do my best. I really like this sound. It's a similar concept to how if you run your finger around the glass or the rim of a glass of water, you kind of get a resonant humming sound. It's obviously not the exact same as that, but it's a similar principle. The spring vibrates and it makes a gentle hum. The strength and the pitch of this sound varies by the key. Almost no two keys are the same. And for me, again, this is quite a desirable sound. I used to think I only liked it, but it turns out that the more I use the keyboard, the more I love this sound. Now, the other sound the spring can make, it's a rattling sound after releasing the key. And I'm no keyboard engineer, but I'm assuming this is the spring rattling around in its housing. This is, to me, an undesirable sound. It's extremely annoying. I don't think anyone likes this sound. And it's kind of random as to whether or not a spring will make this sound. Each key has its own spring. And luckily, it didn't appear on more of a handful of springs, more than a handful of springs. So now, it would be a bummer if you couldn't get rid of this sound. But the good news is that you can play around with the springs in order to eliminate this sound. I mean, in the tutorial video on the Model F Labs YouTube channel, it shows you, there's like detailed instructions about how to flex the springs using tweezers. I recommend Tweezerman. And this is something you're supposed to do before you even start using the keyboard. However, I also found that for a few of the springs, a more aggressive flexing and playing around with them was necessary. For a couple of them, I even needed to remove the spring from its housing, flex it, and then reseat the spring. And that eliminated the sound. The rattling sound at least. And again, it's worth noting that the vast majority of keys do not have this sound, and for the few that did, I was able to take care of it just by tinkering with the springs. So again, to recap, you've got the clicky sound of the flipper smacking against the PCB and registering a keystroke, that's guaranteed. And then you have two sounds that the springs can make, which vary in strength and pitch. One of them is desirable, at least to me, that's the humming sound. The other one is not, and the latter can be eliminated by adjusting the springs. So I hope this clears up any confusion. Now, some people do not like any sound coming from their springs, and they only want the sound of the flipper striking the bottom plate. So there is a mod to accomplish this, which involves placing super floss inside of each spring to absorb any and all spring sounds. I even saw one video where someone used the inside strands of paracord to accomplish this, which I thought made more sense than using floss. I really like tinkering with keyboards, so I tried out the floss mod using strands of paracord, and it was pretty simple to do. You just cut pieces that are about 15 millimeters in length, and you place them inside using tweezers. Ingrown hair tweezers do the job. Again, Tweezerman, very good tweezers. If the pieces of paracord or floss, if they're too big or too long, then it will affect the feel of the key. And if they're not big enough, then it won't dampen the sound enough. But it's pretty simple to get it to work. So I did this mod, and at first I was pleased because I had modded my keyboard, but after using it for a little bit, I realized just how much I liked the humming of the springs resonating and vibrating. It's one of the things that differentiates this keyboard from other keyboards. With the Floss mod, this keyboard ended up sounding like my old Model M keyboard, which isn't bad or anything, but I just felt like something was missing. I really do like the sound of the springs from this keyboard. So I ended up removing all of the paracord, and I feel at peace now. I can give you a little sound test, but the quality of the microphone I'm using, not the best, but here you can just hear it. Hopefully you can pick that up. Okay, so the next topic I'd like to go into a little more detail on is the firmware and key mapping software. So the older models of this keyboard right here, they came with firmware that was programmable via a program called VIA or VIA. It looks like this. It doesn't actually support the keyboard anymore because I changed the firmware, but it looks like this. This would be like how VIA looks. Pretty simple. You got key map, change layouts, stuff like that. And VIA is a pretty serviceable program. You can even, with some complex maneuvering, you can do some advanced functionality like home row mods. If you don't know home row mods, it's where you take the home row keys here and they can have dual functionality. I'll get to that very quickly. The problem with VIA is that you don't have access to the basic settings, like the fundamental keyboard settings, specifically something called ignore mod tap interrupt. So yeah, so again, one of the beautiful things about these types of keyboards, any QMK keyboard, QMK is kind of like the open source basic software for any keyboard that is customizable. Some of the keyboards they have their own proprietary software, but most of them run QMK. And one of the cool things again about QMK is the ability to have a single key have dual functionality. Generally, it's by how long you hold the key. And with a keyboard like this one, it's fairly essential. So now we're going to get to a different program called VIAL. And I'll show you this cluster here. You see there's no arrow. Well, this is looks like an arrow key, but these aren't normally arrow keys. But if you come up here, so this is VIAL, you'll notice that I've changed the key's functionality. You've got left, down, and right. And there's something that looks weird here. It says right shift underscore T and up. So what that means is that if I hold the key, it'll function as a shift key. But if I tap it, it'll function as up. Now, I don't really care about the rest of these keys because I have, control and alt and stuff over there. But that's very cool that you can have this key function as two different things. And as I was talking about home row mods, some people, they like to have their home row keys here. So this is home row for the right hand, this is home row for the left hand. They like to have it, if you tap the key, function as its normal key. So if I tap F, it functions as F. But if I hold F, it functions as a shift key. So you can even see I've done that right here. So VIA comes standard with this functionality, just VIA. But it's a little bit, it's problematic. So what's problematic about having like home row mods, the dual functionality with a program like VIA? So you see here I have a blank document, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to type the word fast, and I'm going to type it fast, so F-A-S-T. Now what comes out here? A-S-T, capital A-S-T. So even though I didn't really hold down this F key, it still functioned as a shift. I'll show you again. So F-A-S-T, and look up there. So why is it functioning as the held key even though I didn't hold it? It's because I pressed F and A. They ended up being pressed simultaneously. Wouldn't it be cool if you could ignore that if you weren't holding it for so long? So on VIAL, you have something called QMK settings. So if we go here, I can click something called Ignore Mod Tap Interrupt, and I'll just save it. Okay, so now if I go back to the document, so now if I type fast again, look at that, I actually get the F registered. Do it again. It registers correctly because I didn't hold it. Now, what's the downside is that if I want it to function as a shift, I have to hold it for at least 200 milliseconds. So I'll hold it A, and now you'll see it registers as that. And yeah, with these QMK settings, you have a lot of different, you have a lot of power. For example, right now the holding term for how long I need to hold it, it's 200 milliseconds, but I can change that if I want. You can change a lot of things, and there's so much functionality here. So you've got basic keyboard layouts, you've got combos, tap dance if you know what that is, and one of my favorite tabs is called Quantum. It gives you so much functionality. I know it looks like a bit of an overload, but the user interface it's just very friendly and very easy to use. And if you're someone who's programming their own keyboard layers, it's gonna be pretty easy for you to figure out. So yeah, it's just superior. This VIAL firmware is superior to the VIA firmware. I had to update, this keyboard originally came with VIA firmware, so I had to update it to VIAL, but the newer keyboards, they come standard with it. And it's just a relief not to have to upgrade or change the firmware, and just that it works right out of the box. One last point, if you have a keyboard that you want to flash with, if you have, not this keyboard, but if you have a keyboard that's QMK ready and or uses QMK firmware and you want to flash it with VIAL firmware, you might not get QMK settings in that firmware. The firmware chips for these keyboards oftentimes are quite small. Not this keyboard specifically, but keyboards that have QMK firmware. The chips are quite small, and so they can't fit all the settings. And so just be aware of that. So if you have a keyboard, like for example, for my split keyboard, I needed to actually go in and install the QMK software and write and hack the code. And it took a while to do, and it was kind of a pain. But anytime I do something like that, I kind of feel like Neo in the Matrix. So if that's something that speaks to you, then you'll understand. But again, this keyboard comes with QMK settings as default in its firmware, and you really shouldn't have any problems with it. And if you have problems with other keyboards, there's enough documentation on there. It's all open source, so you should be able to figure it out. But if you have questions, I might be able to help you if you post a question in the comments. So that concludes the informational sections of this video. The sounds of the keyboard and the programmability of it are the two areas where I felt like not enough attention had been given on other YouTube videos. But with those sections out of the way, I'd like to share with you my opinions and recommendations. So let's start with some pros and cons of this keyboard. Pros, customizability. As I just showed you, VIAL is fantastic software for customizing layouts. The build quality of this thing, it's extremely, extremely sturdy. Like, that's like solid metal. And the keycaps are fantastic. They feel great. The look of the keyboard for me is a pro. I mean, I think this thing looks gorgeous. The feel of the keyboard is another pro. It's got a fairly unique typing experience that is comparable to a Model M, but still a teeny bit different from that. Okay, the next pro I think is the sound. I think this thing is extremely satisfying, and this is definitely not comparable to anything. And the support. So Joe, who's the man behind the project, has always been super helpful to me. I thought I was driving crazy with all my emails and questions about layout changes and logistics of the order, and he was always very prompt and courteous in responding to me. So, I mean, that to me is a huge pro with this. This guy really stands by the product, and it's kind of his baby, this whole project, and he takes it quite seriously. And yeah, he wants to make sure that everyone's happy. So, okay, now let's get to some cons. The first con is the delivery time. So this keyboard that you're seeing here, I bought this as one of the initial backers when the project was still in its infancy, and this thing took almost 2 years to ship back, when this project was first starting. The last keyboard that I got, this one here, that one took a month and a half to ship, which is a lot less than 2 years, but it's still a long time for a normal purchase. Okay, so another con is setting it up. It's not as simple as just opening the box and plugging it in. I mean, you can do that, but that's not recommended. First of all, you're going to have to install the keycaps. And you should definitely check to see the springs and that they're all working well. It's recommended you flex the springs, and you might need to even flex them more aggressively or reseat them. There's a detailed video about it on the Model F Labs YouTube channel, and it doesn't take that long to watch, and it doesn't really take that long to set up, but it is a non-zero thing. Another con is that there's no flip-up feet for angling. You can buy extra stuff on the Model F website to accomplish that, but it's just not as simple as like flip up feet. I actually just use Velcro, like Velcro tape, and a space bar, like just a random space bar to accomplish that. I can show you here real quick. So another con would be that I don't think this keyboard is ideal for gaming. I mean, technically you could use it for this purpose, but you probably want something with linear quiet switches. I mean, I guess if you're trying to relive some 80s DOS fantasy, then this keyboard would fit the bill, but yeah, you probably want a different type of keyboard for gaming. The last con is that this is not a cheap keyboard. However, it does favorably compare to other premium keyboards, and that brings me to my final thoughts. Yeah, so for my final thoughts, I love this keyboard and I can't recommend it highly enough. The only real downside is that you might need to wait a month or two to get your order. And I guess if you play a lot of PC games and you don't have a serviceable keyboard already for that purpose, and you only want to limit yourself to one keyboard at or around your desk, then this might be, a problem for you. But the other downsides aren't really downsides. The setup is fairly easy and shouldn't take more than an hour to complete. The lack of flippers is mitigatable, and the current price as of the making of this video is extremely competitive. And I know that sounds ridiculous considering that these keyboards cost $200 or $250. And let's be honest, that's a lot of money to spend on a keyboard for most people. But if you're watching this video, you're probably not most people. You're probably aware that most premium keyboards or niche keyboards cost over $300 or end up costing that much after modding them with new switches or custom keycaps or what have you. So back when I first got this keyboard, again, I was an initial backer and it cost over $500. Now, is this keyboard worth over $500? I think you can make an argument that no keyboard is worth that much money. You kind of need to be a little bit off to value a keyboard at such a high price. But I will readily admit that I am a bit off in this regard. I mean, the thing about this keyboard is it's just so amazing, and I really love using it. But yeah, again, at the current price of $200 to $250, it's hard for me not to recommend it. Now, if $200 is too much for you, then honestly, the best money you can spend would be around $50 for an entry-level mechanical keyboard. That to me is like the biggest delta in keyboard quality. It's the jump from like around $20 to around $50. And it really is amazing how great these super budget keyboards are these days. I really don't mean that with like any hint of irony or facetiousness or anything. Like that I think is honestly the best bang for your buck for keyboards is around like the $50 range. And if you want some extra functionality, then you can find some very full-featured $80 keyboards. The name Keychron comes to mind, among other brands. But if you're serious about keyboards and if you're considering spending upwards of $100 on a keyboard, just do yourself a favor and round it up to $200, because the difference in quality and the pure joy of this typing experience, it's well worth the difference in price. And yeah, I mean, for better or worse, most premium keyboards go for between $200 and $500. I mean, I just recently, like a few seconds ago, recommended Keychron as a good budget brand for keyboards. But besides budget keyboards, they also make a $240 premium keyboard. Now, I've never used it, so I don't want to throw any shade at it at all. And, I'm sure it's a lovely keyboard. But I couldn't imagine spending that kind of money on a keyboard, which is more or less an upgraded version of any other mainstream mechanical keyboard. And people, buy what you want, man. Don't just buy what you want. If it makes you happy, go for it. Get it. I really I'm not trying to gatekeep. Get whatever keyboard makes you happy. But I personally couldn't spend that kind of money for just a mainstream keyboard. This Model F Reproduction keyboard is not mainstream. No, it is quite unique. And what I really like about it, it's not unique for the sake of being unique. It's unique in a way that you can feel and you can hear. And plus, I think it looks really rad. So that's about it. If you have any questions about what I've talked about in this video, please feel free to drop them below in the comments. I'll be happy to answer them. And please forget to like, comment, and subscribe, as I do not care about YouTube algorithms. And have a great rest of your day.